Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita, Kareer, and our top story this hour. Well, the BRICS Summit was in its second day today, and in fact, after almost 5 years, the Prime Minister and Xi Jinping, Chinese President, met in Russia today for the first bilateral meeting since 2019. The Prime Minister said that both sides focused on peace and stability along the border, and that stable relations will also contribute to a multipolar Asia and a multipolar world. President Xi even said that it's important for both sides to contribute to promoting multipolarization and democracy in international relations. Remember, ties between India and China had taken a severe hit since the military standoff in Ladakh in 2020. And now the hope is that this de-escalation of border tensions between India and China might just speed up business and trade relations between the two sides as well, especially because Chinese investment into India faced roadblocks due to that border standoff between the two countries. We'll discuss that crucial bilateral and also the evolution of BRICS as a grouping, as a gathering. But let's take a quick look at what the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary said after that bilateral with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए।
We are both at a crucial phase in our respective modernization endeavors. It best serves the fundamental interests of our two countries and two peoples for both sides to keep to the trend of history and the right direction of our bilateral relations. It's important for both sides to have more communication and cooperation, properly handle our differences and disagreements, and to facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations.
This meeting happened, as you are all aware, close on the heels of the disengagement and patrolling agreement and the resolution of issues that had arisen in the India-China border areas in 2020. Naturally, the two leaders welcomed the agreement reached between the two sides. Through sustained dialogue, we hope to schedule the next round of the SR's talks at an appropriate date. They were of the view that stable bilateral relations between India and China, the two largest nations on earth, will have a positive impact on regional and global peace and prosperity.
All right, so Foreign Secretary of India, Vikram Misri, speaking about that bilateral engagement between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. And of course, to discuss this big story further, I'm now joined by Dr. Raj Kumar Sharma, Senior Research Fellow at NatStrat. Thank you, Dr. Raj Kumar Sharma, for joining us this evening. Extraordinary meeting between the Prime Minister and, of course, the Chinese President. But with this bilateral that has been conducted today and that border disengagement decision that came about 2 days back, can it be said that relations between the two sides are now normal?
Thanks for having me on the show. I think normalization still may be a little distance away. But I think what we can definitely say is that, the tensions that were there between India and China since last 5 years, since Galwan issue happened, I think we'll have a lot of breathing space in our foreign policy. Because what you see since last, I would say, why this has happened, we need to go back to 2023. Two Quad partners of India, the US and Australia. We need to see there were summits between Mr. Xi Jinping and there was a summit between US China happening in November, and around the same time there was also a summit between Australia and China. So what I'm trying to say here is that despite the fact that the Western countries were trying to show China as an elephant in the room, but their relations with China were going on. I mean, there was no breakdown like we had a breakdown with China. And of course, at some point of time, we had to make this realistic assessment of our relations with China, because it is a country with which we share a border. India is the only Quad country which shares a disputed border, and that to a land border with China. So, I mean, what has happened, it will give a lot of breathing space to India. There have been issues, recently, of course, what is happening because of the Khalistan issue between India. And I wouldn't say it is only Canada, it is a lot more than Canada, right? So we have to see this in a holistic perspective, and also America's policy to isolate Russia, because Russia's own pivot to Asia means their relations with India and China. So there are important signals that come out from this meeting, because if you see the pictures, Mr. Putin was sitting between the leaders of India and China. So I think it is a good news for India's foreign policy. We'll have a lot to breathe now.
Absolutely, Dr. Sharma, and very interesting points made. We'll come to some of those points, including how the geopolitical order now changes. But let me also get in Ms. Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States and Germany. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us this evening. I want to get in your thoughts on today's two crucial statements that have come out from India and China. The Prime Minister Modi, stating that stable, predictable relations will contribute to a multipolar Asia and multipolar world. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping also stated that both relations between the two sides will promote a multipolarization of the world and democratization of international relations. How do you read these two statements, and what kind of change in global dynamics do we see, especially as far as the global south is concerned, with these two statements coming in from both the key leaders of the global south?
Look, it's a bit early, because what I see has happened is the first step. It's a decision to work out protocols of patrolling in the two remaining friction points of Depsang and Demchok, and to have rotational patrolling by the two sides with not more than 15 soldiers at a time, to keep each other notified of the schedules of patrolling, to have regular meetings of military commanders every month, and so on. Now you have to see how it's implemented on the ground, because, Galwan occurred just after the two sides had reached an agreement on pullback of their troops from Galwan, and the next day there was a clash. So I think it has to be trust but verify. I think India should avoid the naivety of rushing enthusiastically to assume that everything has changed. Yes, this is a positive step towards easing tensions along the border, but I think we have to be cautious, and we have to also be prepared. I think we should not let down our guard, because there are many steps which have to be taken. And beyond the disengagement, which the two sides have now agreed to undertake at Depsang and Demchok, there's also the larger question of de-escalation, because both sides have deployed 50 to 60,000 troops along the border. And then there's been a rapid buildup of military infrastructure on the Chinese side. So how will we proceed with this? Because as long as those stepped up deployments are there, tensions will remain. So it has to go beyond disengagement to de-escalation, and then to pull back of military forces, and perhaps even dismantlement of threatening infrastructure. Then you could say we are on a more normal
Absolutely, and ma'am, trust will need to be made so far as a long-term basis is concerned, so far as the ties between the two countries are concerned. But a start has been made, and that's incredible indeed. But let me come to you, Dr. Sharma. What's also crucial to note, even as this bilateral happened today, is the timing of these talks. And of course, just 2 days back, that important announcement that came in from the Ministry of External Affairs. But the question is, what has caused China to blink now? And an important point that was made by ma'am also, can the dragon be trusted given how the PLA came into our borders?
I think trust factor has never been there between India and China. So I think I agree with Ambassador Meera Shankar
Yes.
that we can't let the guard down as on the border. That's not going to happen. But the fact is, it also apart from this, we also see some attempts by Russia to basically tone down tensions between India and China. And that has been the factor since 2020, because if you remember in 2020, when Galwan happened, Russia was chairing the RIC, and it was also the chair of SCO. So what happened is that Russia tried to tone down the tensions between the two countries, and first contact at the ministerial level happened in Moscow. So we see this has happened at a time when there are wrinkles in India's relationship with the West. The Chinese themselves are feeling the issues because nobody in the world today knows what is the exact situation of the Chinese economy. They have issues, but because of the concerns with data and other stuff, we do not know what exactly is the situation, but there are concerns. And also, there is also a concern of late that has come in the expert community in China. Maybe they wouldn't want push India completely towards the West. So they do have their concerns that India drifting totally away from their India's own identity, and putting too much of pressure on India may have implications for, of course, negative implications for China itself.
Right. Let me ask you one more question, Dr. Sharma. Do you see investments going back to pre-2020 levels before, India banned those Chinese apps and games? Or do you expect some sort of caution? Going by what you've said, I do sense that, you'd say that there could be a caution that could be exercised by both sides, particularly so far as India is concerned. But what kind of investments can we now see being exchanged by both sides?
I think investments, I still have my share of doubts because, China, the way we broke off, after 2020 has created many issues. So I think that the areas which are not exactly related to our national security, something might happen on those fronts. But I think we'll have to first see how it behaves on the border, because that is the real, as ma'am said, the strategic trust needs to come back at some point, right? So I think this is the time first we will see politically how things move on. And maybe then that may be the time when we see Chinese investments coming into Indian economy, potentially.
Absolutely. So you're hinting that there's still some time before Chinese investments start coming back into the country. But let me come to you, ma'am, on the other important point on BRICS as a grouping. Now, President Putin said that it would be wrong to ignore the unprecedented interest in strengthening ties with BRICS that has been displayed by countries of the global south and east. And of course, the Prime Minister also spoke about it. In fact, the Iranian president also spoke about it. So far as BRICS as a grouping is concerned, it was seen as a group that could not really come together. But now do you think BRICS is a real new thing, and will it start to crack the US-led global order?
Well, I think it provides alternatives and it creates a more multipolar world, because it's not in the interest even of a country like India to have a unipolar world or to have just two poles, US and China, one of whom with which we've had somewhat antagonistic relationships. So it is in India's interest also that there is a multipolar world. And that is what the space that BRICS provides. It really could be called part of the flexible geometry of global cooperation that India is trying to weave for itself. As far as China is concerned, I think the, investments and other aspects, economic aspects of the relationship, there will only be a gradual opening. Right now, what we see from Prime Minister Modi's meeting with President Xi is that they have agreed to resume communications at a political level. So there will be dialogues at the national security advisors level, because he's the special representative on the border, and there'll be dialogues at the foreign ministers level, apart from ongoing contacts at the military and official diplomatic levels. So that is really the outcome which we see from this meeting. And I think that India should follow an incremental approach, not something which says, okay, because we have this agreement on petroleum.
That is one point,
so
ma'am, that has also been made by Dr. Sharma as well. We're completely out of time, so I'll have to quickly ask one final question to Mr. Sharma before we wrap up this discussion. Mr. Sharma, what kind of changes do you see coming together in global geopolitics with the kind of meeting that has happened between India and China today? Of course, Russia was also there on the same stage itself with so many other countries together. What kind of changes do you expect in global geopolitics?
I think the first and foremost two things I can point out. One, of course, is the return of RIC mechanism in India's foreign policy. Because Russia, India, and China, we were meeting till 2019 before Galwan happened. So I do foresee some kind of return of this format. Of course, it will make a comeback. And second, of course, is, we will see more of global South, because expansion of BRICS today means some kind of competition between G20, G7. Of course, non-alignment is more or less, I would say it is dead. But, BRICS would also want to expand, but it would also want to avoid, a fate like non-alignment, which was more ideological, right? So I think global South plus RIC return, these are the two things I can immediately point out that may potentially will be important from India's perspective in geopolitics.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Ms. Shankar and Dr. Sharma, for joining us this evening and discussing this very, very crucial story forward. Of course, the final outtake, the final conclusion is that there's definitely this expansion of BRICS means that there is going to be competition within multilateral agencies, and definitely global South assumes importance. It becomes even more prominent in the global scheme of things. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to slip into a quick break. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back with lots more.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.